Welcome back to the Poor Proles Almanac, and today we're joined by the team at ACEnet, or the Appalachian Center for Economic Networks. They're a community-based economic development organization that serves 32 counties of Appalachia, Ohio. Their focus is around community canning and kitchen processing for startups interested in selling canned and processed goods. Now, the ACEnet staff offers wraparound services. They do business development as well as business planning so folks can figure out how to get where they want to go. Building small businesses through a collective organization like this helps build networks within communities and develops general resilience. As an accountant and advocate for cooperative model businesses, their unique structure piqued my interest, and I was excited to get to talk to them about what this looks like in practice. And more importantly, can this model be replicated across the country? So take a listen as we discuss how their organization functions and what roles projects like this have in creating a more equitable economy. Thanks so much for joining us. I've got a crew from ACEnet today, and I'm really excited to hear about what you guys are doing, a bit about the organization, and I guess where it came from.
Sure. Well, thank you, Andy, for having us, the full crew here. And ACEnet has actually been around for a little while. We are getting ready to celebrate our 40th year in existence. The organization was founded back in 1985 in Athens, Ohio. And it was originally known as the Worker-Owned Network. And with a name like that, you could probably expect that, the original mission of ACEnet was focused on helping low-income people start worker-owned businesses, so cooperative style type of businesses. There was some funding from the state of Ohio that helped support that mission, and that originally gave rise to about 10 worker cooperatives located in Athens. But then at that point, again, it was literally just direct wraparound business support, right? So putting together a model, helping with piecing together employee manuals, all the stuff that the sort of nitty gritty pieces of putting a business together, but specifically from a co-op or worker-owned perspective.
And this is before they even had designation business structures that were co-ops, like Schedule C, subsection T, I think is the official cooperative structure now.
Subchapter T from a C Corp, yeah.
Yeah, this was before that even existed. So they were really ahead of the curve. We were really ahead of the curve, I should say.
Right. Some of those founders did some more research into what are some more sustainable models for growing jobs in remote or more rural areas, I guess you could say. And in some of those studies, they discovered a community economic development model in northern Italy, which was related to small manufacturers with 20 or less employees. Manufacturers organized themselves into networks and found opportunities that were presented by some emerging niche markets. And that was sort of a blueprint that expanded upon the co-op model, the worker-owned model that ACEnet was originally interested in. And as you can expect in a sort of progressive rural community as Athens is, there begun to be a lot of overlap with the agricultural sector, small farmers, people who were returning to their land, wanting to set up sort of a new model of growing food in Appalachia. And those people wanted access to space to value add the things that they were raising or growing. So it was really kind of a shared effort between the founders of ACEnet and these local agricultural producers to come up with the concept of a shared use kitchen and adding that to sort of the services that ACEnet offers. Those same founders went out west. At that time, I think there was two others in the United States, one in California, one in Oregon or Washington, one of those Pacific Northwest states, that was doing a shared use kitchen type model. They took what they learned, brought it back to Athens, and over about 4 or 5 years, this would have been about 92, got together some private investment, a lot of funding from the state and USDA, and opened the Athens ACEnet Food Venture Center in 1996. And because there was so much engagement, early on about this idea, it wasn't like there was a period of malaise when the Food Venture Center opened. It was packed out immediately. There was 40 businesses kind of lined up, ready to go. I'm the one presenting the historical context here, but this is still way before my time at ACEnet. But from what I've heard, it was pretty chaotic because it wasn't just that there was all these different businesses in there, but each and every food business had different needs, different equipment that they wanted access to. And then from the compliance side of things, the regulatory side of things, the local health department, state department of ag, FDA, if they were involved with, so they had no idea how to regulate a space like this. So it was a learning process early on, but I think that might help answer your question about how did ACEnet become what it is today.
Yeah, and I'll back that up with, for folks that are just tuning in, that ACEnet has a common community kitchen that can be used for commercial processing as well as business training and education, among some other stuff. And I feel like I was so excited to talk about this. I forgot to let you guys introduce yourself. So Adam, please tell everyone your name.
Sure. Thanks. So I'm Adam Kody. I am the Director of Operations at ACEnet.
I'm Cameron Shasteen. I'm the business counseling specialist. So I provide that technical business assistance to people, our tenants, or just anybody with a business, pretty much anywhere in Central Appalachia. We cover a really wide region. And I'd like to talk more about that with the Regional Food Business Center a little bit down the road. But I'll let Izzy go and introduce herself.
Yeah, and I'm Isabel Stitchick. I'm the Appalachian Accessible Food Network Coordinator. I basically take any extra food or any donated food and move it back into our community where it's needed the most. So kind of filling that food access piece.
Awesome. So I do want to talk about the food access, but I want to start with the beginning of the whole, I guess, processing the food. So you've got this kitchen that's used, and historically with like community canneries, people could just pay with excess produce. Obviously things are a little bit more complicated now, but can you talk a bit about like what this actually looks like in practice? Like, where do people come from that want to use this? How do they actually use it? And then kind of where do you guys fit in to make that process smooth?
Right. And it's a great question. I think the cannery, what we call the thermal processing room, to get a little more scientific about it, but that space that we offer is probably the most, I would say, utilized of our specialized processing rooms. Okay. And that means that we have folks who come from as far away as Indiana to use that space, because it does offer processing capabilities that even if someone does have access to a commercial kitchen, it's probably not quite as well outfitted as ours is. Steam kettles, a complete bottling line.
Oh, wow.
So the production potential itself, is pretty cool and pretty advantageous, whether you're somebody who's what we would call an anchor user, who's in there weekly or multiple times a week, or you're a local farmer who wants to do, add value to a batch of apples or something that they have that they can turn into applesauce relatively quickly and efficiently. So it covers all those different spectrums. As far as like the barriers to access that space, they've gotten a little bit, I would say, more intensive in the last few years. Our Department of Agriculture has been a little bit more strict about what the requirements are for folks to access that space. Anyone who uses that space to make what we would call acidified foods, or foods that have, acid ingredients added to them to make them shelf stable or safe, they have to go through a class called Better Process Control School. They have to send their products into a lab. We work with a lab at NC State for what's called a process authority analysis, basically a letter that says, this is the safe way to make this product. And they have to register with FDA. These are all things that we've done many times. We can help people through that process. When I first started at ACEnet was able to hold those licenses and basically act as the responsible party. So that has become a little bit of a barrier, especially if it is for those, seasonal producers who want to access the space once or twice a year. We feel like that's a little bit challenging for those folks when it used to be just show up, bring your stuff in, and we'll help you do the whole production run, as long as you have enough manpower to help with that.
And I'm assuming you're talking about like for resale, but if someone wanted to come in and can their own squash or whatever, that'd be fine.
If someone wanted to come in and can their own squash for personal use, that is not something that we currently align our space with.
Oh, really?
So we're not to your terms, Andy, a community cannery.
Okay.
We're a community cannery for small businesses.
Okay.
Basically all the used for that purpose, at least during my time at ACEnet.
Okay.
Not that we wouldn't be open to it, but it's just constantly being used by commercial operations. I don't know when we would be able to have people come in here except for night times, and even weekends. It's pretty active.
Right. Yeah. And it's equipment that comes with a high degree of technical training. Right. So a lot of time, like with our newer clients, ACEnet staff sort of have to be present to operate the filler machine, for example. which, speaking to your point earlier about bottom line and revenue, right? That can be challenging if we're not, we might have to come up with a different hourly rate, I guess I would say, if we open it up to the community, and we'd have to see what that would exactly look like. So, and then just the economics of it, it is an hourly rate. So we charge hourly to use that space for our businesses. It's pretty reasonable, compared to a lot of other spaces that do similar things to what ACEnet does, especially for the equipment that we're supplying. But we do charge a little bit more for that space compared to our regular central kitchen, just because of the equipment and the maintenance and the staff support that comes with that.
Izzy, could you talk a little bit about the farm to school project?
Yeah, for sure. So I work within the Appalachian Accessible Food Network. I'm going to call it the AAFN, so I don't have to say that over and over. And that includes ACEnet and also two other nonprofits called Community Food Initiatives, CFI, and also Rural Action. So the farm to school processing is mostly a rural action project. So my job is just to be the kind of glue where I need to be. So I assist Rural Action in both the procurement and also the processing of the food, just like maintaining relationships with local farmers. And we'll get in different shipments of different local produce each month, every few weeks, especially in the summer during the height of the season. And we will use either the facilities in ACEnet Athens or ACEnet Nelsonville to process the produce. We've also started doing like freezing them really quickly. I don't know if that's like flash freezing or something like that, but like blanching them and then freezing them very quickly. So we've used all the different larger freezers that they have there and the big like vat that you can boil stuff in. So yeah, we've done just a lot of different processing work, processed carrots, berries, tomatoes. So yeah, that's kind of, I guess, where the community food processing aspect comes in. And then yeah, all of that produce goes to local elementary schools in Athens County.
So who's actually doing the processing?
So it's me and then a few other AmeriCorps members and the farm to school coordinator at Rural Action. Her name is Alicia.
Okay, is there any education on that side of things? Or is it just more of we're going to utilize this resource to get this food out that's fresh and healthy to people that need it?
Education in terms of like what the produce is?
Like the processing and so on.
For the kids or for us?
Yeah, I guess like the kids.
I know that they make up a little sheet of like where this sweet potato came from, who grew it, and how it grows. But I don't think they really comment on the actual processing of it.
Okay.
They do get tours of the Community Food Initiative's gardens, though, don't they? Like some of the produce being used are grown for farm to school pipeline.
The produce that we're using for farm to school is usually coming from local farmers because we need like pounds and pounds.
Gotcha. Okay. So they just have those community gardens at the schools. Gotcha. There are so many things going on in Athens. It's truly like a haven of these little pockets of agricultural and food education. So it's easy to confuse them.
Yeah, there's a lot of great farm to school. Yeah, and so the community gardens are CFI's project. So at various local elementary schools, there are community gardens that the students have access to. And there's a environmental education program called Sprouts, and that runs throughout the school year. And the kids learn about how to cook different produce items, where it comes from, how it grows in the garden. I'm not super certain on the curriculum of it all, but it's very interesting. And yeah, there's a lot of like farm education and produce education, food education catered towards kids here in the area. It's great.
Back to the ACEnet component, it does seem like ACEnet has found a way to work itself into the small farm community around you in a way that it's not like only people of certain political persuasions may know what this is unless you're like tied to it. It's more actually tied into the day-to-day processing and food production of the community. Would that be accurate?
Absolutely. It's just, it's completely necessary around here in such a rural area. This is Appalachia, obviously from the name. So yeah, it doesn't really matter who you are. Like if you want to start a business and you don't know what you're doing, there's not a ton of resources in general. And so, that's why we have people coming from all over Central Appalachia. And, we work with people in whatever ways we can. If they're too far away, we'll meet with them virtually and try to some Amish people we have to send letters to back and forth in the past. So really, we just try to meet anyone wherever they're at, however we can. That's kind of a lot of what I do as the business. What am I? Business specialist, something like that. Yeah, we just try to anything people ask for. We try to say yes, we can do it, even if we've never done it before. And just we learn it on the spot. One of the reasons I really like your Common Sense podcast. Once you reached out to us, I checked it out. That's basically, I feel like what I'm doing on a daily basis with people is going over the same stuff and just trying to get them to understand, we want you to be competitive, and you can't be competitive unless you understand your business. So we try to give them those tools.
Yeah, the idea of okay, it's good to be profitable, but do you understand profit margin and your profit margin you need, what scale you need to be at to get the profit margin you need to be able to pay your team what you want to pay them. It's a domino effect, but you have to understand these fundamental pieces to be able to kind of tie all this together. That kind of knowledge isn't political. It's very much, this is, math, really. It's algebra. Okay. It's how do you make these numbers do the thing you want them to do? How much, if you need to leverage, how much leverage can you use before you over leverage? And that, I think, can be really intimidating to people that may or may not have done well in math class in school, to then say, okay, I know how to do the thing that I want to do to have a business, but I don't know how to do the business part of the business that I want to have. And trying to find a way to access that without going back to school, conventionally or whatever it might be.
Right.
So I do find that the business incubation side can be really powerful. So in terms of that business incubation, what does that actually look like? Is it a 101 type of training, or is it coaching? How integrated do you put that into this co-op perspective?
I know for me, I try to give people the tools that they need to run their businesses. Everyone's coming from a different place and has different needs. So it's just, every single person you work with, it's going to be a different experience, whether it's, teaching them how to, read a financial statement, or even why you would want to, or just helping them communicate with their vendors because they need to raise their prices and they're too shy to do that without just a little push forward, to really anything. Just I don't know, what's some of the weirdest things you've ever helped with, Adam? There's plenty.
Oh man. Yeah, we could take up a lot of time. I would say that we take all comers, and there's very different needs based on where because we've been around for so long, Andy, we'll get a lot of startups for sure, but we also get a lot of businesses who have been doing things for a while and might not need as much of that hand holding early on as a startup needs. From my experience and what I've seen be effective for a brand new startup business who doesn't know what the heck they're doing, it's the more checklists that you can provide them, the better. That's basically the easiest way to kind of explain how to get from step 1 to step 15, be able to access the kitchen space, get your products into market. We try to get that into as easy language as possible, but then actually sit down with them and spend time walking them through each of those steps as much as they need. Because ultimately, what we don't want to do is, to Cameron's point, have a business owner rely on us for the little things 3 years after we started working with them, right? We still want to be able to help them out with the bigger questions, with the challenges that they might have around distribution. Once that comes up, and they need to start moving product around, that's certainly a challenge where we are in Southeast Ohio, and things like that, meetings that they might have with potential buyers, training them up for those types of conversations. But we want to give them the tools as early as possible so that they can start kind of taking responsibility for the success of their business in those first, I would say, 2 years. The sooner that we can get them across some of those bridges, the better.
So what's been the feedback on I'm assuming that there's some kind of cooperative bent to the education that you guys provide. Is there more of a culture in the region because of the small farmers that have worked or collaborated together to understand the value of cooperatives and to not shy away from the idea of cooperatives? Or is there still a bit of resistance from that idea of I've built this thing, so I don't want to share it with other people?
That's a fantastic question. What do you think, Adam? I think there's really a great culture of cooperation in Athens specifically. I know
amongst the farming community, I would say, yeah,
sure.
there's a much more welcome approach around that business structure with that subset of the folks that we work with, and it's important to note that while farmers make up a decent chunk of our food businesses, we have a lot of folks who are caterers, food truck operators, people who are making legitimate consumer packaged goods that are going to go out into the market. But we do what we can to incentivize those businesses to work with our farmers to source their produce, source their meat, source their ingredients. So while I wouldn't say we try to push any business into one specific business structure, our knowledge of co-ops, and when I say our, collectively, the one person who's not on this call is Leslie Schaller, who's one of the founders of ACEnet and is also the founder of Casa Nueva, which is one of those founding cooperative businesses that we speak to when we talk about the Work Her Own network and how ACEnet was originally developed. And she is a person, if you ever do an episode just about co-ops, who would be able to talk to you for hours about that topic.
Sounds enticing. So I'm not going to hold you to it by any means, but like how many of those entrepreneurs do you guys work with that would fall under some, like, maybe not technically a C Corp subchapter T, maybe an S Corp, but with equal equitable ownership? How many do you think fall into that more cooperative structure than a conventional CEO down? I know CEOs don't really exist in small businesses, but you know what I mean, like president,
sure,
owner kind of situation.
I know the people I help officially organize their business. Most are just sole proprietors, and so I'll help them with an LLC or a DBA, depending on how much protection they think or I think that they need. Again, I don't like to tell somebody what business is right for them, and a lot of people aren't really coming in here with like, I have this co-op idea, and if they did, that'd be fantastic, and I'd love to help them out with that. But most of the time, it's just somebody who's like, hey, I just want this side gig, or employment sucks. I mean, these days, you kind of have to try harder not to make more money than what most of these employers are paying for retail and food service if you run your own business. So it's just like a no-brainer to do it yourself, to start your own business. So we just kind of help individuals more often than not incorporate.
Cool. Now, with those individuals, like what if somebody shows up at your door and they're like, hey, I really want to process sunchokes or whatever. I've got tons in my backyard. I could probably put out like maybe 1,000 pounds of processed sunchokes. Like, what does it typically cost to like show up there and walk out with a product? And I know I'm like simplifying that a lot.
No, it's a good question. So, I can break it down to you, in terms of our pure pricing. So we charge a $50 intake fee. Basically, that's the only one-time charge that you have to work with ACEnet and get all the introductory service that comes with that, right? So all of that hand-holding through the compliance process, the regulatory process, facilitations for meetings with the inspectors at the state level, local level, federal level, if you're making an acidified food, that buys you all of that, which is a great buy. And there's no annual fee. It's like once you pay that fee, you're basically an ACEnet client for life as long as you need our services. Everything beyond that is very product dependent. If they took those sunchokes and wanted to make pickled sunchokes, right, and make them acidified in a shelf-stable product, there's a little bit more of a investment because you have to take that better process class. That's like $300. You got to send your products off for testing. That's like $150 per product. And then the ACEnet fees that come with that are the kitchen usage and if you need storage as well. Right. You talked to Andy earlier about how we generate a decent amount of our own revenue. Some of that comes from kitchen usage, a decent amount of it. Storage is a big driver of that. Storage space. We have another facility in Nelsonville. It's much larger. It's about 98,000 square feet. So it allows us to rent out a lot of warehouse space, but also temperature controlled storage, cooler storage, and freezer storage is one thing that we can never have enough of and is a huge scarcity issue in a lot of remote areas or rural areas, I should say. So, I would say it's like, I would be hard pressed to tell someone to move forward unless they have a couple $1,000s saved up if they really want to access some markets and make a business for themselves. But if they want to just do a side hustle and they got $500 and they want to buy some packaging and ingredients and go through the intake process, that's doable as well.
That's not too bad at all. I mean, not to downplay a couple $1,000s, but I mean, I don't have to tell you how expensive that equipment is.
Exactly.
And how expensive getting business consultation is, or screwing up the paperwork and then having to fix it. All that stuff adds up really quickly. So the idea of showing up one day and then walking out with a product for a couple grand is not bad at all.
Yeah. And it's interesting. You mentioned that you're outside Boston. I've been doing this long enough where I've had a chance to meet a lot of other operators that do a similar thing to what ACEnet does. I think one of the best models it's called the Commonwealth Kitchen outside of Boston. And the founder of that space said something once that I'll never forget, which is kind of what I think the best things that our facilities or facilities and organizations like ours offer is the privilege of failure, right? And we're not saying that we want anyone to fail. Obviously, success is the intended outcome here. But if someone decides to do this crazy thing of entrepreneurship and start a food business and they make it 3-4 years, and for whatever reason, it doesn't work. The product isn't a fit for the market. They just don't have the right labor in place. If they work at a place like the Commonwealth Kitchen in Boston or ACEnet in Athens, Ohio, chances are at the end of the lifespan of that business, they're not going to be in a terrible place financially, right? They'll be able to pivot into something else, seek other employment, whatever it might be, as opposed to if they were to construct a processing room and spend $200,000 on equipment. We offer a lot of the guardrails sort of around that startup process, so that even for those businesses that do not succeed, there's other opportunities waiting for them out there.
Yeah, I think the thing that really sticks out for this model in general is the idea that not too many people actually need access to a kitchen 24/7 or a cannery 24/7, right? You only need access for maybe a few hours a week for 99% of businesses. So why would everyone that wants to do this go out and have to spend, to your point, $200,000 to develop these resources to then may or may not make a profit? Definitely going to get hurt on cash flow because you've got this huge amount of money tied up. It doesn't make any sense. And I think this is something that is not just to canning and small food processing, but a lot of things we do as a society, that there's no real reasonable justification for everyone needing to buy these singular one-time use or a couple time use a year expensive things. This is like rampant, I think, in like the homesteader community, right? Mm-hmm. Where everyone needs to have a chicken depulker or beekeeping equipment or whatever it might be, right?
Right. Everyone wants to just do their own thing instead of utilizing what's already available in their community and building off of that.
Exactly. Or even creating the resources for those things in your community. Like a lot of people talk about like tool libraries, but this kind of falls under that same umbrella of, okay, we don't all need a rototiller.
Athens does have a tool library.
It does it? Really?
I just got to represent Athens right now. Yeah.
You guys got everything.
It's through the library too, so you can actually check out tools through the library, pressure washers, weed whackers, stuff like that. It's pretty awesome.
That is pretty awesome.
Log splitters, great one that I like to borrow.
Oh, don't tell me. I might have to move to Ohio.
Yeah, you know what? ACEnet is going to be hiring like 3 full-time positions here in the next couple of months. So anyone listening,
that's awesome.
I'd love to pull some people from your audience into our ecosystem.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. But to my point, like this model isn't just like a goodwill moment, right? Like this is not just about goodwill, but this actually makes like a lot of financial sense for communities, for individuals that want to start businesses. Even far right economic beliefs would be like, well, yeah, that makes being able to contract out this small space makes a heck of a lot more sense. And then the question is like, why aren't we doing this more? Because it does make sense. And as you guys are seeing it can work very profitably.
Yeah, I agree. One of my favorite things about my role is getting to kind of experience so many different perspectives. And like nobody's against what we do here. It doesn't matter what they go home and watch. Everyone loves what we have to offer them. And I love I'm about 1 year and a few days into this role. The way I got introduced to ACEnet was I moved to Athens and I just sent ACEnet my resume. And I said, hey, you guys work with a lot of food businesses. I'm in food service. Can you just forward my resume to some of them? And I did end up working with somebody who, after my first day, she decided to dissolve her product line. And so that was it for me. And I was like, well, that was that. But then I started my own mushroom farm. I came in as a client and I utilized the services. The guy who had the job before me, he was fantastic to work with. And it really just put a great taste in my mouth. And then my landlord kicked me out for my business getting a little too big for what they were comfortable with. And so I ended up just going to the ACEnet holiday open house last year. And they were like, hey, when do you got, you got to get in here and we got to talk about when to get your business back up and running. And I was like, yeah, I'd like to do that, but I'm just looking for a job right now. And they were like, oh, well, this business counseling position's open, like they really like here to hire from the network that we've built from people who do own businesses and have had like proven success and experience. And it's really just like everything about ACEnet really is like a network, and I think that kind of resonates with what I've heard you talk about in the few episodes I've listened to your podcast, where like their money really is where their mouth is, and they just look out for anybody no matter what. Even ACEnet doesn't like to ask for money because we have so many other partners that like our executive director thinks that they should be able to ask the local community for money. That's not our responsibility.
Sure. Now, this idea of like community, do you feel like you're actually seeing that develop with the people that are utilizing the space? Like, you see the same, like I think about like almost like you go to a gym, right? You go to the gym every day, you start to see some of the same faces. You may or may not ever talk to them, but you're like, that guy's always on the treadmill going super fast and that person's doing blah, blah, blah. Like what kind of community, or is there any sense of community that's like building up at the facility between people that are utilizing it, and further if that ends up kind of leaking out of that space and into farmers markets and so on?
It has leaked into the farmers markets. Good observation. Yeah, there's so much community, especially in that kitchen processing space where people are just constantly working. The business owners, they're around each other all the time. I've gotten into the habit too of just walking around and talking to people when they're processing, and that's really given me a lot of opportunity to kind of hear what their pain points are, what's keeping them up at night. And it's helped me be able to talk to them like, and realize like, you're losing money on sales. Well, then why don't we get together and look at your pricing and see how we can fix that? And then come in and check in 3 months later and see that, they went from a net $5,000 loss to a $20,000 profit a month. So there's like real tangible effects from the sense of community here too.
That's awesome. How deep do you go into the financial side of things, like financial education, financial planning?
As deep as anyone will let me, really. No one's really found my limit yet. So if anyone's listening to this and you want to talk money, let's do it. I love that stuff. And this, and I like used to feel like oppressed by money. And so I just kind of went head first and just was like, I want to understand this financial literacy, accounting. So that's what I'm in school for right now is accounting.
It's a good choice. I keep telling everyone to do it. We can't find enough entry-level people, so there's a lot of opportunity.
I'm halfway through a bachelor's degree, and it was good enough for ACEnet because you're right. There's just not enough people that care about it or want to know about it.
Yeah.
And however you feel about money, accounting for it is pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool that you can move, if you move money around, you can make a company profitable, not profitable by capitalizing assets, things like that. And then how you can use that to leverage against, well, next year I know I'm going to make a ton of money because I've got a big contract closing in January and it's a once a decade kind of contract. Well, how can I time my expenses to pay less taxes and put more money in my pocket, put more money in my employee's pocket, whatever it might be? That can be really empowering and like inspiring to like think about how can I scale this thing up and like help more people and hire people and pay them better wages and all these different things that we can do if we don't treat it as like a vulgar thing that I think money can really represent.
Yeah, I agree. And also on the topic of like livable wages, that's something, being in my position, I really do like having employers' ears on this, being able to say like, what's just kind of convincing them that it's worth, don't pay $15 an hour, pay $20 an hour. Like, what are you going to get for what, like the difference in your purchase? You have the cream of the crop to pick from, especially somewhere like here in Appalachia. Like you put a $20 an hour wage out and you'll get hundreds of applications. At $15 an hour, you may as well go work at Kroger or Tim Hortons or something,
Yeah.
We have one of those here.
Yeah, even just like walking through, like, all right, well, you hire somebody, there's a startup runway of like before they actually make you money. What if you factored that into somebody that you keep long term? Suddenly, $20 an hour actually makes you're breaking even, but you also feel better because you're paying somebody. You don't have the stress and headache of having to rehire somebody. So you're essentially spending the same amount of money to get a better product. So it does make financial sense as long as you understand how to translate the numbers the right way. So to shift gears, Izzy, can you talk a little bit about the food access piece of the work you do?
Yeah, so ACEnet, in terms of ensuring food access for people, is kind of like ACEnet is like the funder behind it all. Like Leslie is the director of programming. She's amazing. She knows all the ins and outs of the grants, and she's securing funding for our programming. And then I'm doing more of the boots on the grounds type work. We're going out and supporting the Veggie Van program, which is a donation-based farm stand, and that's through CFI. We do a weekly local produce distribution on Tuesdays out of the loading docks at ACEnet, and we have over 20 pantry partners who come and pick up like a little box of local produce, and that's distributed within their little micro networks. We help support the Chester Hill Produce Auction, which is comprised mostly of Amish farmers, but there are some other local farmers that bring their produce there, and that's how we're able to secure a lot of bulk produce, and that goes back into our local food system. I support the community gardens and the school gardens. What else do I do? We also have a donation station program at the farmers market. The way that works is we have a little stand. People come up to us, they can either donate produce or money. Any money donations that we receive, we immediately purchase local produce from the farmers at the farmers market. And then that all goes into our distribution pile, and that is distributed on Tuesdays at our weekly distribution event. I also supervise a cohort in the summer of AmeriCorps members, and they kind of get the whole big picture of the food system. And we've had some really great retention rate with that too. I was a food cohort member once, and now I'm working here in the local food system. So trying to reach people and teach them about the food system and keep them within that food system as important agents. Sorry, I just threw a lot at you. I think that covered most things.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm curious about in the time you've been there, how seeing people access free food, free, healthy food, what kind of shifts you see in the way people relate to food or relate to that relationship, I guess, because it is a really interesting way to engage in a world where everything's very transactional, right? Where you can get something for nothing, or you can give something non-monetary to receive something. Like, how has that like shifted the way people perceive what you guys are doing, or the relationship that people have with food?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot of disbelief at first, and I think it's mostly based on the fact that we live in a transactional society, but I also think that people are very underserved here, and they're used to going to food banks that have 3-year-old cans of Manwich that they're giving out, which is, that's food, but people realizing that they deserve access to this really nice, healthy local produce that's not grown with pesticides and is benefiting the earth, that they can feel good about consuming and good about feeding to their children. There's a sense of like reverence that is built between both us and the people that are consuming the food. There's also been a lot of excitement around the food. So I'll get to teach people what a butternut squash is because they've never seen that before. And they'll be like, oh, that's awesome. I'm going to take this home and make soup out of it. Or I'll give them recipes and they're like, this is so great. I'm going to make this for my partner or something. And there's a lot of excitement there. So yeah, I think in terms of how people view food and then therefore view us, just a lot of excitement, respect, and empowerment to like, you know what? Yeah, I do deserve access to this. Like, I'm tired of people telling me I don't. Like, even though I may not have the money to buy this like organic produce, like I can still get it in this way and I deserve it. And that feels good.
Yeah, definitely. Have you seen, and I don't know how long you've been there, but you might be able to speak to this, if you've seen any of the people because of this relationship move into similar positions as yours, or like wanting to work with food sovereignty? Has this been, I don't want to use the word radicalizing, but I guess I can't think of a better word to use, a radicalizing experience of like, this is important and significant, and I also want to dedicate my life to making people aware of this injustice?
Yeah, I mean, I hope it's radicalizing. I think that's my goal as a supervisor, personally. But yeah, just speaking on the experience of the past cohort members we've had this summer, one of the people that came in, she was a dietetic, studying dietitian school. Sorry, but
I
what
don't
I'm
know what the word is either.
yeah,
So
sorry, I can't find it right now. Studying diets and nutrition at OU. And she was like, this is great. I like thought I wanted to be a healthcare provider, but now I like want to work in local food and like make this a point to include into my studies. So that happened. I know another cohort member is interning at the student farm right now. She's been doing a lot of work with them, the OU student farm. I think a lot of the farm tours that we did opened up their minds and we're like, oh, like this is great. Like I didn't realize farming could be like this. So yeah, I was a food cohort member now and I used to be a food cohort member and now I am working in this field too. So I would say that it has a radicalizing effect.
yeah, I would hope so. So what's in the future for ACEnet?
Well, we're working on this regional food business center. I was gonna see if Adam wanted to talk a little bit about that.
I would love to, Cam. Thanks for queuing me up there.
Yes, sir.
So ACEnet, along with 18 other organizations across Central Appalachia, applied for and received funding through USDA as part of their Regional Food Business Center program. For those that are not aware, this program funds, I believe it's 12 different regions across the United States. Each region is comprised of a certain number of states and a certain territory, and any food business, food producer within those territories has access to free technical assistance through whoever received the funding within that region. Again, for what they're calling the Appalachia region, Appalachia Regional Food Business Center, ACEnet is part of that group, and it covers the entirety of Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, and then parts of Maryland, Pennsylvania. I think we actually have all of Tennessee as well. But free technical assistance, which is great. That's super exciting. It's the work that we've already been doing, primarily in southeastern Ohio, but expanding our footprint to a much wider geographical region. But the really exciting part about this program, and we are through 1 year of funding, it's a 5-year program, so there are 4 remaining, are what we're calling, or what USDA has been calling, the Business Builder Subawards. And these awards are up to $100,000 for any post-harvest activities for farmers and food producers. And it covers a wide-ranging array of activities, anything from purchasing equipment to staff time to new technologies, anything that can help a business take a next step and start to access a mid-level market. We just got through grading round 1 of applications. We had, I think, about 200 applications get across the finish line in round 1. Round 2 deadline is sometime in March. I'll try to find a date before we actually get off the call here. But it's transformational. This is a great opportunity for a lot of folks who maybe have plateaued or have been looking for a way to scale up and just do not have the financial means or technical savvy to get to that next place. And this program, again, we're still in the early going, but we're really excited about some of the outcomes that we're seeing already.
That's awesome.
I just want to say, Adam, can you explain what a mid-level market is, just so we can get that out of the way? Because that's the goal of this.
Pulling up the website because I want to see if we have our own USDA definition before I spout something off the top of my head.
Well, while you're looking for that, I'll talk a little bit more about why this came. With the COVID supply chain crisis that we all faced with skyrocketing costs of everything because nobody could get anything and food became much more expensive. The Biden administration with USDA, they wanted to test run, what people have been saying for decades, which is we need to take on big agriculture and re-decentralize our agriculture system and have a regional food economies instead of, this just, as increasingly small 1% of farmers owning most of the food supply or producing most of the food supply. And so I think the goal was to test this out for 5 years and then try to get it into the next farm bill as a recurring funding for, awards and technical assistance for small businesses small food businesses until we can kind of build up those regional food economies, because this is all of our first time doing it. We're all learning as we go. We're all just people in America too. Like, I started this job a year ago, this is not something I ever anticipated working on. As blessed as I feel to get to work on it, like, we're all kind of just figuring it out day by day. So who knows what the future of it looks like with the way things turned out, but hopefully we can see some success with this, and at least, try to get the people to leverage their local politicians to talk about putting this kind of program into the Farm Bill indefinitely.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Adam, did you find that definition or?
No, I mean, and I don't know if we have a strict definition on it. But one thing that I will add to that is, I mean, the primary thing here is accessing new markets. So mid-level markets are great if we can get a product that's maybe has a following, has a certain market channel that exists in a local area. And if we can start to move that product into a larger distribution model, that's something that we would love to see on an application. But really just any understanding of what new markets are out there, if we can find a project that tells us, or application that tells us that buying X and Y equipment or this technology will allow us to get to that stage, that's great to see. And there is a focus as well and additional points awarded for underserved farmers and food businesses. So that's something that we also want to see in an application.
Yeah, there's definitely a need for, to the point we were making earlier about, like, not everyone needs to have their own chicken plucker or whatever, right? I think that also exists at scale to individual farmers, like that. Individual farmers should figure out what they're good at and scale at that. There's no need for somebody who's really good at growing carrots to also be raising goats, because they can cut off the grains and feed them to the goats, and that's more efficient. If that's not what you're good at, what your landscape is good for, that's not a good utility of your resources. Your most efficient utility is to get better and bigger at the thing that you are good at. And I think that's where that, in the ideal world, that's probably like as big as you would want to see a company. You wouldn't want to see them international, global, whatever. You'd want them to hit that kind of, I mean, I don't know what market cap you're looking at, but maybe like 9 figures is probably as big as you'd want to see for most products. Obviously, certain things are different, but for like carrots, again, just to keep on harping on that example, you don't need somebody to be growing 10,000 acres of carrots. That might be a little overkill, but finding that sweet spot, I think, can maximize efficiency without losing its sense of place, right?
Absolutely.
And this program, to your point, Andy, it does not apply to agricultural businesses that are that size. We have $1 million cap right now.
Oh, really?
It's a gross income cap.
Gross income cap.
$1 million.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's not big at all.
Yeah. So we're really trying to help out the smaller guys.
And that's who $100,000 is going to be life-changing for,
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a program where we teach some financial literacy with some smaller starting or expanding businesses. And then we give them $3,000 at the end of the program after they've, incorporated their business, they've done the financial literacy training, and just that $3,000 is like life-changing. I mean, I'm their favorite person.
Yeah, you'd be my favorite person too if you handed me a check for $3,000. But yeah, I mean, I know $1 million gross sounds like a lot, but when you look at what the profit margins are on most small farms, it's not a lot of money. For many farmers, $1 million, and they're happy that they're profitable. Never mind like a living wage, unless you find like the right market, which is a whole other discussion beyond this of, niche products and things like that, and social media branding and finding your way to be the next Joel Salatin or whatever it is you're trying to do, right? Of like, how do I justify charging a crazy amount of money so that I can be profitable even if my market isn't very big?
Right.
Speaking of Joel Salatin, he's going to be an advisor now, right?
I think he walked back because they realized people would start digging up his past.
Oh, okay, good. I mean, I'm impartial.
Yes,
because I'm at work.
Of course.
Speaking to your point of like specialization, though, I think Chris Newman, really, Sylvan Aqua Farms, he's the reason I decided to finally just go to school. I never was somebody who thought like I'd go and get a bachelor's degree. I was a high school dropout, but like I love math. I've got some business experience just from trying to survive as a homeless teenager. And just like kind of listening to his reels on Instagram at the time and reading some of his articles on Medium, I was like, it resonated with me. I was like, I do have like this affinity towards business and accounting that like it interests me. It's something that I don't get bored with as easily as other people. And I think that what I'm seeing, running my business even more, my mushroom farm more and more, is that like this is my strength. And I think this is really what I should be sharing with people more so than, I'd love my mushroom farm business to work out still, but it's rough. It's hard to get kicked out and like move all that stuff financially. We just weren't prepared for that. But I'm happy like in this role being able to like provide people with the thing that I can help with, which is like, you don't like numbers, you don't like having to do all this stuff. Well, I love it, so like, let's work together,
Yeah, Chris is great. I will shamelessly plug for folks that are listening that are not familiar with our catalog that he has been on the show twice. He's a friend of mine, definitely a smart guy, worth listening to. Really persuasive about getting people to see things from a different perspective. And I think what you're pointing to is really important. There needs to be, I think, a shift of how individuals that may think of business as being for business people, that needs to shift, because as somebody that does this for a living, you look behind the screen and you realize that most business people are not very good at business. Many business consultants are not very good at business, and they don't know much more than you do if you can learn the basics and you have some good sense of like whether or not something is good or bad. Like if you can kind of read the room of like, is this making money or is this not? And then, look at the numbers to back that up. You can do it. You don't have to have a degree. You don't have to like be reading the Wall Street Journal and watching the stock market to be good at this stuff. So I really hope it's inspiring for people to be like, okay, there's resources like what you've got here with ACEnet, and I kind of want to work for myself because I really want to do this thing, but I don't like business, and I don't want to. I don't have $100,000 to tie up in a kitchen, and for something that's probably going to fail. It's like, no, there are resources for you like this, and I think that should be really inspiring and exciting for people to realize those things are out there, and all they have to do is go find it.
Yeah, and I think you'll find that everyone at ACEnet like loves what we do because we get to see the results of it.
Yeah. Do you guys get a lot of free stuff?
We get snacks and treats. Yeah. I don't know that we get a ton of merch necessarily.
Well, yeah, but like canned goods, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. We get to try a lot of cool things. Izzy brought in some huela colche earlier this summer, the corn smut, if you're familiar.
Oh yeah. How was it?
It was delicious. Well, she didn't love it, right? You weren't a huge fan. It's a weird.
It was kind of funky.
It's you got to get used to it. It was my it was like my fourth time having it, so I'm like used to it. And the first one I had was grown on heirloom variety, and had such like a pungent, earthy flavor. And this one was much more mild, just grown on regular sweet corn. So really, really interesting to taste those differences.
That's awesome. For folks that are listening, they want to check out what you guys are doing. Are you on social media, website? Well, I'll plug the website, but if you can drop social media handles if you're using them. Do you guys ever have like an open house kind of thing where people that are kind of curious can just like show up for the day and be like, okay, so this is what you're about. It's not scary anymore.
We did just have a holiday open house. I don't know our social media. It's probably just ACEnet Works on Facebook, or probably either ACEnet Works or Appalachian Center for Economic Networks on Facebook. Instagram.
You can find us at our full name, which is Appalachian Center for Economic Networks on Facebook. You can find us at ACEnet Athens on Instagram. And we also have a presence on Twitter or X.com.
Oh, man.
We do. Yeah. And I believe that is also ACEnet Athens.
That's news to me. We also our website, www.acenetworks.org, and also check out the Appalachian Regional Food Business Center. That's just appalachiarfbc.org.
Awesome.
And that's, if you're not in Southeast Ohio or Ohio in general, but you're still in Central Northern Appalachia, there's other partners in this Food Business Center that you can work with technical assistance, with these business builder awards. And also, I just want to reiterate, I don't know if Adam touched on this, it's not a physical center. It's just a network of us. And I know the Appalachian one, because of the work that Leslie, our founder, has done extensively with the Central Appalachian Network, which is very focused on like networks and decentralization. Ours has 18 members, but a lot of the other regional food business centers only have maybe a few. They're much more centralized. So we really did, especially because there's just like brain drain and not a whole lot of money floating around the Appalachian economy. We want to be able to like work with other people in other rural areas and nonprofits and help them develop the same skills in their areas that ACEnet's been providing for 40 years. So we're trying to also just help them uplift themselves, help them train technical assistance providers and whatever else they need to like anchor something like ACEnet in their local community, even if it's not necessarily a shared kitchen, but whatever it is that their community needs.
Yeah. And just a note, these regional food business centers exist all across the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So we're part of the one in Appalachia, but there is one, if you're in the US, that you'll have access to as well. And all of them include those better or business builder subaward programming. So those exist out there for you, no matter where you are.
Yeah, go find your people if you're listening.
That's right.
There's also the one last thing. Sorry.
Yeah.
There's like an indigenous one, right? That covers the entire country. Do you know anything about that, Izzy?
Yeah, there's one that unites all the different like tribal territories in the United States, and that covers the whole
The whole country. So if you live in I don't really know what they cover, but it's worth looking into. Unfortunately, I'm not even seeing it on the website, but I know it exists. So
if you find the link later, you can send it to me and
It's the National Intertribal Agricultural Council.
All right. Well, thank you guys. This has been fantastic. I'm real excited to see how things continue to develop with you guys. And if I'm ever out that way, you guys are on my list of places to stop by.
cool. I'll keep looking at your Common Sense podcast. I'm a fan. Like
Thank you.
As I said in the email.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good night.
Thanks, Andy. You too.
You too, man. Thanks for having us.